2 a.m., South Boston. The first thing that hit me was not the heat, it was the smell. It was the acrid, plastic stink of electrical wiring frying inside a wall. It was the smell of failure. My name is Maren Cole. I am 31 years old, a single mother. By day, I am a part-time bookkeeper, trying to make columns of numbers behave. By night, I am a barista, forcing steam through burnt beans for third shift workers. Tonight, I was just a woman choking on smoke in a hallway that was rapidly becoming opaque. My son, Aiden, who is 7, was asleep on the sofa. He had fallen asleep there while I was trying to reconcile receipts, his small body curled around a stuffed bear, breathing peacefully. He was still breathing peacefully, but the air he was breathing was turning to poison. Our smoke detector, the cheap plastic disc on the ceiling, was silent. Its battery had died sometime after New Year's, and the choice between a 9-volt battery and a gallon of milk had been no choice at all. Milk always won. I stumbled toward Aiden, my lungs burning. Panic was a cold, sharp thing in my chest. I scooped him up. He was a dead weight, warm and smelling of soap and sleep. He mumbled but did not wake. The front door. We had to get to the front door. I reached the door, my other hand fumbling for the deadbolt. The metal was hot. Not just warm, but bitingly hot. I turned the lock, pulled the handle. It did not budge. The heat had warped the frame. It was stuck. I pulled again, my shoulder slamming into the wood. Nothing. The smoke was thicker now, swirling from the kitchen archway where the outlet was. I could not see the other side of the room. Aiden coughed in his sleep, a wet, heavy sound that broke something inside me. My phone! I dropped Aiden gently back onto the sofa, covering his face with the cleanest cushion I could find, and ran back to the kitchen counter where my phone was plugged in. My fingers, shaking violently, ripped the cord from the wall. I had no one to call. Not really, but my neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, had once mentioned a number. After her own boiler had exploded last winter. "You call this number, dear," she had said, pressing a crumpled napkin into my hand. "Anytime. Any problem. They come. Faster than the city." I had saved it, thinking it was some 24-hour emergency repair service. I never looked at the name. I just saved it. I found it in my contacts. My thumb hovered over the screen. The name displayed was not emergency repair. It was just one word. Luciano. I did not care. I pressed the call button. The line clicked once. No ringing, just a click. And then silence. I thought the call had failed. Luciano Vele. The voice was not a recording. It was a man. His voice was deep, gravelly, and saturated with a calm that felt obscene in my burning apartment. He sounded like he had been awake for hours, sitting by a phone, just waiting. "Apartment 3. B," I gasped, the words tearing out of my throat. "Smoke, the door is stuck. My son, he's in here." I heard a sound on his end, maybe a chair scraping on a hardwood floor. "My son," I sobbed. "Please." The screen went black. The battery icon, which had been red for an hour, finally gave up. The phone in my hand was dead. The silence in the apartment was suddenly absolute, broken only by the sharp crackle of fire inside the wall. I ran back to the door, pulling with all my weight. It was useless. I looked at the window. We were on the 3rd floor. There was no fire escape on this side of the building. I picked Aiden up again, holding him against my chest, his face buried in my neck. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall furthest from the kitchen, and I prayed to a God I was not sure I believed in. I do not know if it was 1 minute or 5. Time had dissolved into the gray smoke. Then I heard it. Not sirens. Not yet. I heard the heavy, throbbing idle of a large engine right outside. Then footsteps. Not just footsteps, but heavy, measured, fast footsteps pounding up the stairs. A fist hammered on my door. Maren Cole. It was not a question. It was the same voice from the phone. "I am here," I screamed, my voice cracking. "We are here. The door is stuck." There was no reply. Instead, there was a sharp metallic click at the lock, then a second one, then the sound of a thin piece of metal sliding, leveraging and defeating the deadbolt I could not even turn. He had not broken the door down. He had picked the lock. He had picked a lock that was warped by heat in seconds. The door swung open. The sudden rush of clear air from the hallway was a shock, making me gasp. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, silhouetted against the dim hall light. He wore a dark wool overcoat and black leather gloves. He did not look like a handyman. He looked like he owned the building, or perhaps the city it stood in. His eyes, a cold, clear gray, found me instantly. They scanned me, then Aiden, then the room, assessing the smoke, the source. His face was sharp, Italian, and utterly devoid of panic. He stepped inside, moving with an economy of motion that was almost frightening. He did not speak to me. He simply walked over, bent down, and took Aiden from my arms. Aiden, who screamed if a stranger even looked at him, just settled into the man's embrace as if he belonged there. The man, Luciano, turned to me. He reached into his overcoat pocket and pulled out a mask. It was not a flimsy paper mask. It was a black, heavy-duty charcoal respirator. He pushed it firmly into my hand. "Put this on," he commanded. The air was thick with the smell of cold, sharp mint emanating from the mask itself. He was already moving, carrying Aiden out into the hall. I fumbled with the straps, pulling the mask over my face, and the minty, filtered air was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. I ran after him. We did not just walk down the stairs, we descended. He led, taking the steps 2 at a time, one arm securely around my son, the other hand braced on the railing. When we reached the ground floor lobby, he did not head for the exit. He veered left toward the utility closet under the stairs. He raised one leather-gloved hand and snapped the flimsy lock off the door with a single, practiced twist. He reached inside and threw the main breaker switch for the entire building. The lights in the hallway died, plunging us into the emergency lighting, but I heard the electrical crackle from my apartment stop. He pointed a gloved finger at the building security guard, who was just emerging from his office, his eyes wide. "Call the fire department," Luciano Vale said. His voice was not raised, but it carried the weight of an order that would not be questioned. "Electrical fire. Apartment 3, B. Evacuate the 2nd and 4th floors." He then pushed open the main doors and strode out onto the sidewalk, just as the first distant wail of sirens began to cut through the South Boston night. He stood by a large, black-armored sports utility vehicle. It looked less like a car and more like a military-grade appliance. He gently placed a still sleeping Aiden onto the back seat, covering him with a thick blanket that he produced from somewhere inside. He turned back to me. His gray eyes scanned the street, the rooftops opposite, the alleyway 2 doors down. He was not watching for fire trucks. He was watching for threats. He reached into his breast pocket and produced a business card. It was thick, heavy cardstock, embossed with 2 words, Vale Group. He held it out to me. My hands were still shaking, black with soot. I stared at the card, then at his face. Pride is a stupid thing. It is a luxury for people who are not standing on a sidewalk at 2 in the morning, homeless in their pajamas. But it was all I had. "I do not take money," I said, my voice muffled by the mask. His expression did not change. He did not blink. "It is not money," he replied, his voice low. "It is safety." He pushed the card into the pocket of my robe. The fire trucks arrived then, loud and bright and chaotic. Firefighters spilled out, running hoses, shouting. Luciano Vale stepped back, blending into the shadows beside his vehicle, watching them work. He gave them space, but he did not leave. It took them an hour. The fire was out, contained to my kitchen wall, but the apartment was destroyed by smoke and water. I stood on the pavement, numb, watching the last of the firefighters roll up their hoses. That was when I saw him, a man in a cheap leather jacket, standing across the street, half hidden by a newsstand. He was not watching the fire truck. He was watching Luciano. He raised a phone, and I saw the distinct flash of the camera. He was taking pictures of Luciano's vehicle. of his license plate. As if he felt my gaze, the man in the jacket looked at me. He smiled, a thin, unpleasant expression. Then he turned and vanished into an alley. A cold dread, entirely separate from the fire, settled deep in my stomach. Luciano Valle had seen him too. His body was tense, angled toward the alley where the man had disappeared. He turned back to his vehicle, opening the driver's side door. He was leaving. The crisis was over. He had done what the strange number promised. He had come. He looked at me one last time, a silent dismissal. From the back seat of the SUV, a small voice mumbled, "Aiden," when he was waking up. He blinked, looking at the strange man in the front seat, then at the flashing red lights. He was not scared. He just looked sleepy. "Will you come back?" Aiden asked, his voice thick with sleep. Luciano froze. His hand was on the door, his body halfway into the truck. He did not turn around, but I saw his shoulders stiffen. The word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. It was barely a breath, lost in the noise of the idling fire truck. But in the sudden quiet between siren bursts, I knew he heard it. "Stay." I whispered it to a man who picked locks like a professional, who cut power to a burning building without asking, who wore leather gloves at 2 a.m. and whose eyes were accustomed to danger. I am 31 years old, and I have not asked a man for anything in 7 years. But I said it. Luciano Valle slowly, very slowly, pulled his hand back from the door. He straightened up. He did not look at me. He looked up at the burnt-out window of my apartment. He nodded once, a short, sharp gesture. I pulled the mint-scented mask from my face, breathing in the cold, wet air. I felt two things at once, and they were warring inside me. I felt an absurd, profound sense of safety, and I felt the terrifying, ridiculous knowledge that I had just invited something into my life that was far more dangerous than a faulty electrical outlet. He did not move for a long moment. He just stood by the open door of his truck, a tall, dark shape against the flashing red lights. The city noise seemed to rush back in, the sound of sirens, the hiss of water, the crackle of the firefighters' radios. Finally, he closed the door. Slowly, he walked over to me. He did not get close, but he stood in my line of sight. "My people are arranging a room," he said. His voice was still that same low, calm rumble. "A hotel. For the night. You and the boy are not safe here." "Not safe because of the fire?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. I was thinking of the man in the leather jacket, the camera flash. Luciano Valle's gray eyes met mine. "The fire is out. The wiring is not the only threat." He gestured with his head, and one of the men I had not noticed, a man in a dark suit who had been standing by the building's entrance, stepped forward and opened the rear door of the armored SUV. "Get in, Miss Cole. Bring your son." I hesitated. I looked at Aiden, sleeping soundly in the back, wrapped in a blanket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I had no shoes. I had no wallet. I had no phone. All I had was a 7-year-old boy and the clothes on my back, which smelled of burnt plastic. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere clean," he said. He did not offer a hand to help me. He just waited, a statue of impatient patience. I climbed into the back, settling beside Aiden. The door closed with a heavy, final thunk that sounded like a bank vault ceiling. It was utterly silent inside. The chaos of the street was gone, reduced to a muted light show. Luciano Valle got into the passenger seat. The man in the suit got into the driver's seat. We pulled away from the curb smoothly, leaving my old life, my burnt apartment, behind. We drove for maybe 10 minutes into the heart of the city, to a hotel whose name I did not recognize. It was not flashy. It was all dark stone and discreet lighting, anonymous but expensive. Luciano Valle got out first. He spoke to the driver, then opened my door. He led me and a now drowsy Aiden into the lobby. The night manager did not even look up. We rode a silent elevator to a high floor. He used a key card to open a suite. "No one will bother you here," he said, standing in the doorway. He did not step inside. "There are no strings. You keep the key. I keep my distance." I looked past him. Down the hall, by the elevators we had just exited, 2 men in dark suits were standing. They were not trying to blend in. They were a statement. "Your distance looks a lot like a security team in the hallway," I said. My voice was hoarse. A flicker of something amusement maybe crossed his features. So fast I might have imagined it. "Sleep, Miss Cole. Your son is safe tonight." He turned and walked away. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my legs finally giving out. Aiden was already climbing onto the massive, king-sized bed, burrowing under the duvet. "It smells nice, Mommy," he mumbled, and he was asleep. I stood in the marble bathroom, looking at the soot-stained woman in the mirror. Maren Cole, 31. The woman who was supposed to be a financial analyst by now. I had been top of my class, a scholarship student in a world of legacy admissions. I was good with numbers. I could make them sing. Then I met Evan Ward. He was not a numbers guy, and he was all charm, fast smiles, and a restless energy that I mistook for ambition. I was 23, I got pregnant, I dropped out of my finance degree, just 1 semester shy of graduating, to get a job. Evan was going to hit it big, and he just needed time. He did not hit it big, he hit the track. He found online poker. He found men who lent money at rates that were not legal. He trundled down a slope of debt, his charm souring into desperation. 2 years ago, he went to find work. That was what his note said. "Going up north, babe, big job, we'll send for you and Aiden." He left me with 3 months of unpaid rent, a stack of utility bills, and a gut-twisting fear that followed me into sleepless nights. He did not just disappear, he evaporated, leaving a vacuum that sucked all our security with him. This was Boston, modern Boston, where rent for a 1-bedroom apartment eats 50% of a double-shift salary, where healthcare is a game of roulette, and a trip to the emergency room for a broken arm can mean choosing between medicine and groceries for a month. I learned to balance my books like I was solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing. I became an expert at patching holes, at stretching a dollar until it screamed. But Evan had left a hole I could not patch, a debt. And I had a feeling the man in the leather jacket, the one taking pictures of Luciano Val's car, was connected to it. I showered until the water ran cold, scrubbing the smell of smoke from my skin. I wrapped myself in a thick hotel robe, but I could not sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the city lights, and I did the only other thing I could. I called my best friend. Ray picked up on the second ring, her voice wide awake and sharp. She is an emergency room nurse. The world is always ending on her shift. "Maren, what is wrong? I thought you were working." "Electrical fire. Ray, at the apartment." "What, are you okay? Is Aiden okay?" I heard the background beep of monitors, the muffled sound of a PA system. "We are fine. We are safe. We got out. But the apartment, it is gone. Ray, it is all gone." "Where are you? A shelter?" I hesitated. "A hotel in the city." "A hotel? How did the Red Cross get you a voucher already?" I took a breath. "A man. He got us out. His name is Luciano Val." Silence for a full 10 seconds. The only sound was the electronic pulse from her end of the line. "Maren," she said, and her voice was low, intense. "You hang up this phone. You grab Aiden. You walk out of that hotel. You go to a police station. You go to a shelter. You go anywhere else. Do you understand me? Ray, he saved us. The door was stuck." "I do not care. Luciano Valle is not a handyman. He's not a good Samaritan. He is the Vale family. He's a ghost story that surgeons tell when someone gets brought in with their knees shattered. He's not someone you get helped by. You get entangled. Stay away from him." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "It is a little late for that, Ray. He already got involved with us." "This is not funny. Maren, people like him do not do things for free." "He said no strings," I whispered, mostly to myself. "People who say no strings are the ones who tie the tightest knots. Be careful." We hung up, but her words echoed in the quiet room. I looked at the sleek, dark hotel phone. I picked up my new temporary key card. The hotel had complimentary high-speed internet. I sat at the desk, opened the laptop provided, and I started to dig. It did not take long to find him. Luciano Vale. He was not a ghost. He was a billionaire. He was from New Jersey, originally. Italian. His company, the Vale Group, was a massive logistics and real estate conglomerate. They owned port facilities up and down the East Coast. They owned half the new luxury towers in the Seaport District. And then there were the rumors, the whispers on financial blogs and in old crime forums. They called him the boss of the Vale family. They called it an old family corporation, a polite way of saying they had operated outside the law for generations. But he was different. He poured millions into community charities, homeless shelters, job training programs. He was the clean boss, the legitimate one. I dug deeper. Public records. The Vale Group had recently acquired 3 massive container terminals in the Boston port. The press release called it a streamlining of assets. The financial reports I managed to pull up showed he was cleaning up expenses at an aggressive rate. And that was where I found the other name, Maranzano. The old forums lit up. The Maranzano crew, an older, more brutal faction, had allegedly used those container terminals for years. A quiet, efficient way to handle non-legitimate cargo, to launder money. Luciano Vale had not just bought a terminal, he had cut off their pipeline. A shiver ran down my spine. The man in the leather jacket, the camera, they were not just random thugs. They were watching him. And now, they had seen him with me. I finally fell asleep as the sun was turning the sky a dirty gray, my head full of container ships and angry ghosts. When I woke, Aiden was already up, watching cartoons on the massive television. He was wearing a small, fluffy hotel robe. He looked happy. "Mommy, are we rich now?" I smiled, my heart aching. "No, sweetie, this is just for tonight." He hopped off the bed, and I saw he was wearing a new pair of sneakers. I had not even noticed them. They were a good brand. His old ones had holes in the toes. He was trying to tie the laces, his small fingers fumbling. "I cannot do the bunny ears." "Here, let me—" "Mr. Luciano did it," he said, concentrating. "He came in while you were asleep. He brought me these. He said I should not walk on the cold floor. He knows how to tie shoelaces like magic. Mommy, super fast." My blood went cold. He had been in the room while I was asleep. He had come in, left shoes, and tied them. I looked at the perfectly tied bow on Aiden's right shoe. A man who can pick a burning lock in under 3 seconds, I thought, would also be an expert at tying knots. I dressed us both in the new, simple clothes jeans, sweaters, socks that had been left in bags by the door. Also, while we slept, I packed the few toiletries. I was ready to go. I would call Ray. I would figure it out. I would not be a project. I was checking out at the front desk, my jaw tight with a false bravado, when the receptionist stopped me. "Miss Cole, this is for you." She handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope. My name was typed on the front. I opened it in the lobby, my hands shaking again, but this time with anger. It was not a check. It was a lease agreement, an apartment in a brand-new, high-security building in the North End, 2 bedrooms, utilities included. My name was on the lease. It was already signed by the landlord, and it was paid 3 months of it in advance. I lifted the envelope to my face. From the corner, where a thumb might have pressed it closed, came the faint, sharp, cold scent of mint. This was not no strings. This was Annette. I stormed out to the curb, pulled the Vale Group card from my pocket, and I dialed the number. He answered on the first click. "Luciano Vale? I am not your charity project, Mr. Vale," I said, my voice low and furious. "I do not want your apartment. I do not want your clothes. We will be fine." There was a pause. Not a long one, just enough for my words to hang in the air and feel stupid. "I do not owe the boy because of money, Miss Cole," he said. His voice was not cold, but it was final. "I owe him because I arrived in time." The line went dead. He had hung up on me. I stood on the sidewalk, the Boston morning rushing around me, holding a key to a life I did not ask for, given by a man I was becoming terrified of, and even more terrified to need. I had no choice. That is what I told myself. I stood on the curb, the lease in my hand and my son's hand in my other. Pride is a luxury. It does not pay for shoes. It does not put a roof over a child's head. I took a cab to the address on the lease, a new, anonymous building in the North End. It gleamed with security cameras and cold, polished granite. The apartment was beautiful. It was sterile, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the harbor, the water a flat gray sheet. It felt less like a home and more like a high-end holding cell. Aiden, however, loved it. He ran to the window, his small hands pressing against the thick glass. "Look, Mommy," he said, his voice bright. "The boats look like toys from up here." I spent 2 days in a suspended reality. I used the money I found in the pocket of the hotel robe, a crisp $100 bill that was definitely not mine, to buy groceries. I enrolled Aiden in the local elementary school, a place with a brick facade and a bright blue slide in the yard, a place I could never have afforded on my own. Luciano Valle did not call. His men were not visible. It was just silence. I told myself that Ray was wrong, that she was paranoid from too many night shifts in the emergency room. I told myself he was just a man who paid his debts, and he felt he owed Aiden for the fire. I almost believed it. The illusion shattered on the third morning. I walked down to the lobby to check the mail. Nothing. But when I returned to our apartment, when I pushed open the heavy door, I saw it. A plain, white envelope was lying on the welcome mat. It had been slid under the door while I was gone. My heart, which had been beating at a normal rhythm, gave a low, heavy thud. I picked it up. My hands were steady, but my stomach was cold. There was no name on it. I opened the flap. Inside was a single 4x6 photograph. It was Aiden. He was in the new schoolyard, the one with the blue slide. He was climbing the steps, his head turned back toward the camera, laughing. It was a clear shot, taken from a distance, through the chain-link fence. I flipped it over. 3 words were written in a thick black marker. Pay Ward. Not Evan. Ward. His last name. The name on the utility bills he had left behind. The name of the man who had disappeared 2 years ago. My hands started to shake. As I stared at the words, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a cheap, prepaid phone I had bought with the grocery money, a number I did not recognize. It was a text message. "Marin, I need to talk. It is about the debt and about Luciano. Evan." After 2 years of absolute silence, 2 years of missed birthdays, of me juggling 3 jobs to keep us fed, he was back, and his name was in the same sentence as Luciano Valle. The casual mention felt like worms turning in my gut. The 2 men, the one who had abandoned me and the one who had saved me, were suddenly horribly connected. My first instinct was to run. My second was to call Ray. My third was to call the police. I did none of them. What could I say that my deadbeat ex-boyfriend had finally texted me that a stranger had taken a picture of my son? They would file a report. They would tell me to be careful. I pulled the heavy, cream-colored card from my wallet, Vail Group. I dialed the number. I did not call him because I trusted him. I called him because the picture of my son, laughing and vulnerable, had turned my lungs to ice. I called him because he was the only person I knew who would understand exactly what that photograph meant. He answered on the first click. "Luciano Valle?" "He is being watched." I said. My voice was a choked whisper. There was a pause. "Marin, who is being watched." His voice was still calm, but the flat, bored quality was gone. It was replaced by something sharp. "Aiden, my son, at his new school, they sent a picture. To the apartment." I was sobbing now, my anger and fear collapsing into panic. "And Evan, my ex, he just texted me. He mentioned you. He mentioned your name." The silence on the other end was absolute. It was not a waiting silence. It was a listening silence. "Where are you?" he finally asked. "In the apartment, the one you—" "Stay there," he commanded. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone. I will be there in 5 minutes." He was there in 3. He did not knock. He used a key. I heard the lock turn, and I nearly screamed, backing away into the kitchen. He stepped inside, followed by 2 other men in dark suits. He was not wearing an overcoat this time, just a perfectly tailored black suit and a white shirt. He was not wearing his gloves. His eyes scanned the room, then me. The photograph. I handed him the envelope. He took it, his bare fingers careful not to smudge the surface. He looked at the picture of Aiden, then flipped it over and read the 3 words. "And the text," he said. I held out my phone. He read the message from Evan, his expression unreadable. "I need to know who is watching him," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to know what this is." He looked at me, then at his men. "Wait outside." They left, closing the door behind them. He and I were alone in the sterile, sunlit room. "We will meet," he said. "Not here. I do not want to talk here." "Where?" "A diner, a few blocks away. It is open 24 hours. It is loud. It is public." He looked at Aiden's toys, piled in the corner. "I will have someone stay with your son." "No, I'm not leaving him." "Yes, you are," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You will leave him with Sophia. She is outside. She raised 3 sons of her own, and she is a better shot than I am. He will be safer with her than he is with you right in this moment. Go, get your coat." The diner was exactly as he described. It smelled of burnt coffee and old grease. The neon sign in the window hissed, casting a pale pink light onto our booth. The vinyl seats were cracked. Luciano Vele, in his immaculate suit, looked like a predator that had wandered into a petting zoo. A waitress, her face tired, slapped down 2 menus. "Coffee." "Yes," Luciano said. "Black." "Same," I mumbled. He waited until she had poured 2 cups of thick, dark liquid and walked away. "The photograph," he said. I slid the envelope across the table. He pulled the picture out and stared at it. "He took this from the fence," I said, needing to fill the silence. "He was outside the school." Luciano did not respond. He was looking at the picture, but not at Aiden. He was looking at the edge of the frame. He pulled out his own phone, a sleek black block, and took a picture of the photo. Then he zoomed in. He kept zooming, enlarging the image until the pixels began to blur. He was focused on the chain-link fence and on the hand that was gripping it, a hand that I had not even noticed. He zoomed in on the middle finger of that hand, even blurred. I could see it, a tattoo, a dark, snarling head of a wolf wrapped around the knuckle. "Maranzano," he said. The word was cold. "What does that mean? Who are they?" He finally looked up from his phone, his gray eyes meeting mine. "They are the people who used to run the port terminals, the people I displaced, and they are the people your son's father owes." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Evan?" "Evan Ward," Luciano said, taking a sip of the awful coffee without a wince. "He has a substantial debt on the black ledgers. It is not a gambling debt he can walk away from. He owes the Maranzano family. And they think I can pay it." I laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "I'm a barista. I cannot pay—" "They do not want your money, Mara." His voice was flat. "They have been watching me for months, trying to find an angle. I am a difficult man to find. My routines are not public. My vehicles are secure." He slid the photograph back toward me. "But 2 nights ago, someone sold them new information. The license plate of my vehicle, its location at 2 a.m, parked outside a burning apartment building in South Boston, a building where I stayed for over an hour. The pieces clicked into place, and they were sharp, and they hurt. "Evan," I whispered. The shame was suffocating. I had been so stupid. I had believed his lies, his promises of coming back. "Evan sold you. He sold me to pay his debt." "He sold me to get an extension," Luciano corrected calmly. "He gave them leverage. He gave them you and your son." I wanted to be sick. I wanted to run out of the diner, grab Aiden, and get on the first bus out of the city. I have to go, I said, standing up. I will take Aiden. We will go to my sister's in Ohio. They will never... Sit down. It was not a request. They took a photograph of him at a brand new high-security school less than 72 hours after you moved in. They found you because I put you in that apartment. They will find you in Ohio. They will find you wherever you go, because you are not Marin Cole, the barista, anymore. You are the leverage. The words hit me like a slap. He was right. I was trapped, and... I have a place, he said, his voice low. In the North End, not a rental. It is a safe house. My safe house. It is secure. My people will take you and the boy there tonight. You will be invisible. My entire body stiffened. A safe house. A gilded cage. No. He raised an eyebrow. No, I said again. My voice was shaking, but it was firm. I am not your property. I am not your prisoner. No one is taking my son anywhere. We will not be locked away. And your alternative, he asked. The question was simple. He was not mocking me. He was asking for a fact. I had no answer. He watched me for a long, silent moment. Fine, he said. And I was shocked. You will not go to the safe house. You will stay in the apartment. But you just said, we are not safe there. You are not, he agreed, which is why I will stay outside your door. The idea of him sitting in a hallway, a target, was absurd. You cannot... My phone buzzed on the table. Both of us looked at it. It was Evan again. I read the text message aloud, my voice flat and dead. They just want to talk. They want you to set up a meeting with Vale. They will wipe my debt clean. They just want peace. Trade Vale for peace. I looked up from the phone and into his eyes. They do not want peace. They want you. They want to end this, he said, nodding slowly, permanently. I was the bait. Evan was the hook, and Aiden was the prize. I took a long, shuddering breath. I looked out the diner window at the normal people walking by, living their normal lives. I would never have that again. I let the breath out. All right. I looked back at Luciano Vale, the man who had brought this storm to my door. Stay, I said. The word tasted like ash. But you are not staying in the hallway. You are staying inside, where I can see you. I watched his face, expecting something, a smile, a look of victory. I got nothing. If the devil's going to keep his word, I whispered, I suppose he is not really the devil. He's just effective. Luciano Vale did not smile. He just nodded, once. And the machine began to move. Before the waitress could even bring the check, he was on his own phone. He did not dial. He just spoke into it, his voice low. Deploy. Primary residence Alpha Protocol. He looked at me. Your phone. I handed it to him. He held it in his palm, and then, with a strength that seemed impossible, he crushed it. He snapped the entire device in half with one hand and dropped the pieces into his coffee cup. You will have a new number by the time we return, he said. It will be encrypted. You will give it to no one, except your friend, the nurse, Ray. My head snapped up. You know about Ray? I know you have one friend. She works at Mass General, and she is currently on shift. She will also be monitored, for her safety. He stood up, pulling a thick wad of cash from his pocket. He dropped a $100 bill on the table to pay for a $4 coffee order. We walk back, he said. Sophia will drive Aiden to the apartment in a separate vehicle. From now on, she drives him to school. The route will be different every day. We walked out onto the bright sidewalk. The world felt sharp and dangerous. When we get back, he continued, as if discussing a grocery list, I will give you a new backpack for your son. There is a reinforced panel in the bottom. Inside that panel is a distress button. You will show him how to use it. You will tell him it is a game, a way to call you if he ever gets lost. You will make him practice. We reached his armored SUV, parked brazenly in a loading zone. A bright yellow ticket was tucked under the windshield wiper. Luciano plucked it off, crumpled it in his fist, and tossed it into a street-side trash can without breaking his stride. He opened the passenger door for me. As I climbed inside, I felt a strange, dizzying wave of relief. It was the feeling of a plan. For the first time in my life, I was not just reacting, not just trying to plug the holes in a sinking boat. There was a strategy. It was cold, it was brutal, and it was not mine, but it was aimed at protecting my son. I found myself craving the cold, clean efficiency of it. I buckled my seatbelt, the silence of the truck enveloping us. I was terrified. I was terrified of the men with wolf tattoos, but I was more terrified of this man sitting next to me, and of the part of me that was starting to depend on him. I was losing my freedom, one piece at a time, trading it for safety. We never went back to the safe house in the North End. We were already in it. The apartment I had thought was a gift was, in fact, a fortress. Luciano had not given me a lease. He had given me a gilded cage after our return from the diner. The atmosphere changed. He did not leave. He took the sofa in the living room, a silent, 6'2" shadow in my peripheral vision. His men, the ones in the dark suits, were gone from the hallway. They were replaced by Sophia, the woman he had mentioned, a compact, older woman with sharp, kind eyes who sat in a comfortable chair by the elevator bank, knitting. Aiden loved her. He did not seem to notice the transition. To him, this was a high-rise adventure, a new friend named Sophia who drove him to school, and a new man named Luciano who lived on our couch and worked on a laptop that never seemed to close. Luciano brought a laminated card into the apartment on the second day. It was a list. He placed it on the kitchen counter. "The rules now," he said, as if discussing the weather. There were 12 of them. 1. No unscheduled departures. 2. All deliveries, including food, are to be screened by Sophia. 3. Communications on approved devices only. 4. Windows remain locked. Shutters are tested nightly at 8 p.m. I read all 12. They covered everything from visitors, none to trash disposal handled by staff. My life, my small, chaotic, independent life, was now governed by a corporate security directive. "This reads like the Vale family law book," I said. My voice was sharp, a brittle thing I used to defend myself. Luciano looked up from his laptop. His gray eyes were flat, devoid of humor. "It is," he said. Life inside the red brick, steel-doored apartment became a compressed, sterile loop. I was trapped. I had a view of the harbor, but I could not feel the sea breeze. Luciano was a constant, quiet presence. He was always dressed in a suit, even at 3 a.m. when I would get up for a glass of water and find him reviewing spreadsheets at the dining table. He was polite, he was respectful, and he was utterly suffocating. I called Ray on my new, encrypted phone, the one he had provided. Her voice was a welcome crack of reality, until it was not. "Marin, I am scared," she said. Her voice was thin, high-pitched. I had never heard Ray scared. She was the one who stitched up gunshot wounds and told drunken frat boys to sit down. "What is it? What is wrong?" "There is a man," she whispered, the sound of her apartment door locking clicking in the background. "A dark car. He was waiting outside the hospital when my shift ended. He followed me, all the way to the supermarket, and then all the way home. He's parked across the street right now." My blood ran cold. They were not just watching me. They were watching her. They were expanding the perimeter, just as he had said. Luciano was beside me before I had even motioned to him. He had the kind of hearing that predators have. He took the phone from my hand. "Ray," he said. His voice was calm, reassuring, and terrifying. "This is Luciano Vale. I know you are frightened. Go to your bedroom, away from the windows. Lock your door. A car will be on your street in 5 minutes. It will not be the car you are watching. It will stay there until you leave for work tomorrow. You are safe." He hung up, and he looked at me, his face grim. "They are testing. They want to see how far my reach extends. They want to know who I care about and who you care about." "She is my best friend," I whispered, horrified. "She has nothing to do with this." "She does now," he said simply. I could not just sit there. I could not pace my cage while my friend was being hunted. "I'm not going to be a liability," I said, my voice shaking with a sudden, cold anger. I am not just the leverage. I am a bookkeeper. I am a damn good finance analyst. I can find things. Let me find them. He stared at me for a long time, as if translating my words. Finally, he nodded. He went to his bag and retrieved a second laptop, thin and black. "This one is clean," and he said. "It is firewalled. What are you looking for?" "Them," I said, sitting at the table. "Maranzano." I did not look at gossip blogs or police reports. I looked at their money. Money is a coward. It always tries to hide, and it always leaves a trail. It took me 3 hours. I followed the threads of the port terminals, the ones he had seized. I looked for the companies that had suddenly stopped doing business there, and I found it. It was a charity, a registered nonprofit called Brighter Miles. On the surface, it was perfect. It claimed to send medical and food aid to disaster zones in developing nations. Their website was full of smiling children and crates of supplies. But the numbers, the ones filed with the government, they were wrong. "Here," I said, pointing to the screen. Luciano leaned in, his shoulder brushing mine. I ignored the small jolt. Their shipping manifests. They claim $5 million in antibiotics. But the customs code, this one right here, that is not for medicine. That is for textiles, blankets. I cross-referenced the shipping costs, and here they are claiming fuel surcharges that are 300% above market rate. They are not shipping aid. Luciano, they are washing money. They load a container with $100,000 of blankets. They insure it and declare it as $5 million of pharmaceuticals. The difference comes back to them, clean as a whistle, from an offshore bank. The port was their laundromat. Luciano was silent, his eyes fixed on the numbers I had highlighted. "The port," he said, his voice low. "It is always the port." He turned away from the screen and walked to the window, staring out at the distant, skeletal cranes of the harbor, dark against the twilight sky. "My father," he said. His voice was so quiet I had to lean forward to hear him. He worked at that port. He was born into the old way. He ran the unions for my grandfather, but he wanted out. He wanted what I am doing now, to make the family legitimate, to clean the books. He paused, his reflection a dark shape in the glass. He died in a labor accident down there. A container chain supposedly snapped. It dropped a 2-ton block of steel onto his car. He was crushed. He turned to face me, and his eyes were not gray. They were ice. It was not an accident. The Maranzano family arranged it. My father was cutting off their access, so they cut him off. I swore on his grave I would lock every valve. I will turn off every dirty faucet they ever opened, and you just found the main pipe. The next day, the crisis shifted back from the financial to the personal. Sophia called me from the school. Her voice was tight, urgent. "Marin, we have a situation. Aiden is fine. He's in the car with me, but his father is here." We were there in 5 minutes, Luciano's driver handling the SUV like a weapon. Evan was standing outside the school's chain-link fence, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of a thin jacket. He looked ravaged. He was thin, sallow, and his eyes were wide and darting. "Marin," he said, trying to smile when he saw me. The charm was gone, leaving only a desperate, hollow mask. "Marin, thank God, I just wanted to see him, to see my boy." "You do not get to see him, Evan." I stood between him and the car where I knew Aiden was watching. "Please, Marin, I'm trying to fix this. I am trying to make it right." "Are you?" I asked, my voice as cold as the wind off the harbor. "Are you clean?" He flinched, a gesture that told me everything. "I just need to talk to him, just for a minute." "No," I said, "not now, not ever, like this. You want to see your son. You get a lawyer, you agree to mediation, and you bring me a clean drug test, a real one. It's until then. You stay away from him. You stay away from us." His face twisted, not in anger, but in a terrible, weak desperation. He looked past me, at Luciano, who was standing by the car, watching. Evan's eyes filled with a new, different kind of fear. He turned and hurried away, melting into the crowd of parents. That night, the rain started, a cold, hard New England rain that lashed against the reinforced windows of the apartment. It was a miserable, wet sound that made the world feel small. I was in the kitchen, making Aiden hot chocolate. He was rattled from the encounter, and it was the only comfort I could offer. Luciano was where he always was, in the living room, standing by the main window, watching the street below. I heard a sound I will never forget, a sharp, stinging crack like a whip, followed instantly by the explosive shatter of glass and the thud of something heavy hitting the wall behind me. I looked up. A perfectly round, neat hole had appeared in the window, exactly where Luciano's head had been a second before. Before I could even register the danger, before I could scream, he had moved. He crossed the room in a blur, his body hitting mine, tackling me to the hardwood floor, pushing me down behind the thick marble kitchen island. "Aiden!" I shrieked, my voice trapped in my throat. "Get the boy," Luciano commanded. His body was a heavy, protective weight on top of mine. I crawled, my hands slipping on the floor, pulling Aiden from his stool, shielding him with my own body, pressing us flat. Luciano was already moving again, low and fast, like a panther. He lunged for a small, dark panel on the wall I had never noticed. He slammed his fist into it. I heard a heavy, grinding sound. Steel shutters, the kind I had only seen on storefronts, slammed down over every window in the apartment. They sealed with a final, echoing boom, plunging us into absolute darkness, broken only by the dim, green emergency light in the hallway. I was hyperventilating. My chest was tight, my lungs burning. I could not get any air. The darkness was total, the silence of the apartment absolute. "Marin." His voice came out of the dark. I felt his hand close over mine on the floor. It was not a gentle, stroking gesture. It was a grip, hard, warm, and grounding. "Breathe," he commanded. "Slow, in, out, I am here." I squeezed my eyes shut. I focused on the pressure of his fingers. I focused on the strange, cold scent of mint that always clung to his skin, to his clothes. It was sharp, and it cut through the panic. My breathing steadied. After a long moment, he released my hand. "They are blind now," he said, his voice a low rumble in the dark. "But they are desperate. They have just confirmed we are here. Now, we move." We did not sleep. We sat at the kitchen table in the shuttered darkness, the laptop screen our only light. "Your charity, Guy," he said, his voice tight with a controlled fury. "Brighter miles. It is time to make them run." We went on the offensive. We did not call the police. We called the feds, indirectly. I used my skills, and he used his. I drafted a fake internal memo, something I knew any port auditor would create. A port cost fluctuation report. It was dry, boring, and full of jargon, and it detailed massive, immediate new tariffs and federal inspection fees at the Boston port, effective in 24 hours. Luciano used his connections to leak it. He fed it directly into the Maranzano network. "They will see this," I explained, my fingers flying over the keys. My old skills, my old life, were flooding back. They will think their shipping lane is about to be taxed at 200%. They will panic. They will try to move their cash. All of it, before the new fees hit. Luciano nodded, his face illuminated in the blue light of the screen. And when they move that much laundered money at once, the federal agents, who are already watching them, will finally have a flag they cannot ignore. You are building the trap, Marine. The Maranzanos did not just panic. They fought back. With a different kind of weapon, Evan, desperate and cornered, started talking. He talked to anyone who would listen. He told them his ex-girlfriend, the mother of his child, had abandoned him, that I was a gold digger, that I was clinging to a rich, dangerous mob boss. A gossip columnist at a local tabloid got the tip. My encrypted phone rang. It was not a number I knew. I answered. "Miss Cole," a slick, friendly voice said, "this is Dan from the Boston Herald. We have a source saying you are in a protected romantic relationship with Luciano Vale, that he is paying for your silence regarding his family's business." I hung up, my hand shaking with a white-hot rage. I turned to Luciano, who had heard every word. "This," I spat, "this is what you do. You protect people and you ruin them. I am not some project. I am not your mistress. I do not need you to buy my honor." He did not flinch. He did not get defensive, and he just met my gaze, his own unblinking. "I am not buying. Marin," he said, his voice quiet, but with a force that silenced me. "I am staying." The pressure worked. On all fronts, 2 days later, a formal invitation arrived. It was hand-delivered by a courier, who gave it to Sophia. It was thick, cream-colored cardstock embossed in gold lettering, an invitation to the annual Brighter Miles Charity Gala held at the Seaport Convention Center. At the bottom, a handwritten note in elegant script. "Mr. Vale, let us put this unpleasantness behind us. Come, let us exchange assurances for peace." I looked at the beautiful, expensive invitation. It looked like kindness. It looked like civilization. "It is a trap," I said, my voice flat. "Of course," Luciano said. He ran a thumb over the embossed logo. "Traps always dress up as kindness." He looked at me. A decision already made. "And we are going." The Seaport Convention Center was a glass palace, glittering with fake stars and real money. I was not Marin Cole, the barista, tonight. I was Marin Cole, volunteer treasurer for the Brighter Miles Foundation. My identification badge was a flawless forgery, courtesy of Luciano's associates. The black dress I wore was simple, elegant, and had been delivered to the apartment in a box with no name. Luciano Valle was not a man hiding on my sofa. He was a benefactor, a patron of the arts. He moved through the crowd in a perfectly cut tuxedo, a glass of untouched champagne in his hand. He was wearing his black leather gloves. In a ballroom. It was not a fashion choice. It was a declaration of war. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the bright, brittle notes of a live jazz quartet. Every smile was a lie. Every handshake was an assessment. We were walking into the heart of the trap. A man separated himself from a cluster of politicians and moved toward us. He was built like a concrete piling, his neck thick, his expensive suit pulling tight across his shoulders. I recognized him from the files. Bosco Leone, the right hand of the Maranzano family. He smiled, a wide, predatory grin. "Mr. Vale, a pleasure to see you supporting our humble cause." His eyes slid to me. "And you must be Miss Cole." He leaned in, as if to offer a polite European kiss, but stopped. His face close to mine. He was sniffing. I smelled it too. Cheap. Sweet peppermint, the kind you find in discount candy. It was a vile imitation of the cold, clean scent that clung to Luciano. "We are so glad you could make it," Bosco murmured, his eyes glittering. "We all believe so strongly in the cause, helping the children." He paused, his smile tightening. "We hear you have a boy yourself. Aiden, a bright child, 7 years old, I believe. It is so important, what we do, for the children." My blood did not run cold. It froze solid. He said my son's name like he was appraising a piece of property. I felt Luciano tense beside me, a subtle shift of weight. I did not flinch. I did not look at Luciano. I kept my eyes on Bosco. My face a mask of polite disinterest. I remembered rule number 5 from Luciano's laminated list. We do not negotiate using children. We do not acknowledge threats against family. We eliminate the threat. "It is a wonderful cause, Mr. Leone, I said, my voice as smooth as the champagne. Luciano angled his body slightly, positioning himself half a step in front of me. "Bosco, it is a surprise to see you managing the donations. I assumed you were just muscle." Bosco's smile faltered. Before he could reply, a different voice cut through the air, thin and desperate. Marin, please." My heart sank. Evan. He stumbled out of a service corridor. His rented tuxedo rumpled, his face slick with sweat. He was not supposed to be here. He rushed toward me, his eyes wild. He grabbed my arm. "Marin, you have to listen to me. I can fix this. I can fix all of it." Evan, let go of me. No, you do not understand. He was frantic, his voice cracking. I told them where you were. I told them about the school. I had to. They said they would clear my debt. They will wipe it all clean. I stared at him, my stomach twisting. What did you do? Evan. They just want him. He gestured wildly at Luciano, who was watching, his face carved from stone. They will trade. Marin, your safety. Aiden's. Just for him. It will all be over. We can be free. Please, just let them take him. I just want to be forgiven. I looked at the shell of the man I had once loved, the man who had just sold his son's safety for a second time. The anger and the pity in me canceled each other out, leaving only a vast, cold emptiness. Forgiveness, Evan, I said, my voice perfectly level, is not the same as amnesia. But now, I said. It was time. I pulled my arm from his grasp. Excuse me, I need to check the donation logs. I turned and walked away from both of them, my heels clicking on the polished marble floor. I walked to the treasurer's table, where a laptop was open, displaying the Brighter Miles logo. This was the moment. My fingers found the keys. I was not just a bookkeeper. I was the weapon. I opened the file labeled International Disbursements. The trap I had designed with Luciano was waiting. It was a massive 8-figure transfer, flagged as emergency pharmaceutical aid. It was the bait. I typed in the final authorization code. I pressed the enter key. I was activating the panic button I had created. The fake port tariff report had pushed them to consolidate their cash. Now, this transfer was moving all that consolidated, laundered money in one giant, panicked lump. It was not going to a relief agency in Africa. It was going directly into a protected, monitored honeypot account set up by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The system was automated. The second I hit enter, alarms I could not see were screaming. The entire Maranzano financial network was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Exposed from its roots to its branches, the trap was sprung. And then the world ended. The lights did not flicker. They vanished. The entire ballroom was plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. The jazz music died. A woman screamed. I heard a man's voice, one of the gala's security guards, shout, "The main breaker! Someone must have tripped the main breaker!" He was lying. This was part of their plan. Then I heard the sound, not a loud Hollywood explosion. It was a dry, hard pop, a suppressor, then another. I was blind, frozen, before I could even scream. An arm like a steel band wrapped around my waist. Luciano. He was not a billionaire in a tuxedo. He was a shadow, and he was moving. Down, he hissed in my ear. Now, move. He did not wait. He tackled me, pulling me off my feet, dragging me behind the heavy velvet curtains of the main stage. We crashed hard into a stack of metal audio equipment. Another pop zipped past my ear, so close I felt the heat of it. Luciano grunted, a sharp, sudden intake of breath that was not pain. It was impact. "Are you hurt?" I whispered, my voice choked with terror. "Shoulder," he bit out. He was breathing hard, but his voice was impossibly level. "It is a graze. Stay down." A heavy hand grabbed my hair. Ripping me backward, I screamed. It was Bosco. I could smell the cheap, sickening mint. I was yanked to my feet, my back pressed hard against his chest. I felt something cold and sharp press against my ribs. A knife. "Well, well, Mr. Vale." Bosco's voice boomed in the dark. He was using me as a shield. Come out, come out. Your collateral is ours now." I could see Luciano, a dark shape against the faintly lighter dark, 10 feet away. I could just make out the shape of his gun in his left hand. "Let her go, Bosco," Luciano said. His voice was calm. "Not a chance." Bosco laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Give us yourself, Vale," he whispered, his hot breath on my ear. "You walk out with your hands up. We walk out with the girl. We forget all about the boy. A simple trade. Give us the boss." My heart was a fist, hammering against my ribs. They thought this was a simple transaction. They thought I was a token to be traded. They thought my son was leverage. I took a slow, shuddering breath. I could smell gunpowder, cheap mint, and Luciano's cold, clean scent from where he stood. "You people," I whispered back, my voice shaking with a sudden, pure, cold fury. "You do not understand the word stay." My right hand, hidden by Bosco's body, moved to my left wrist. I was wearing a simple, elegant platinum bracelet. Luciano had given it to me before we left. A donation tracker, says he had called it. It signals the other volunteers when a high-value pledge is made. He had lied. I found the small, smooth clasp. I pressed it hard twice. It was not a donation tracker. It was the 2 a.m. signal. For 1 second, there was only darkness and the sound of our breathing. Then, the entire seaport was illuminated. Massive, blinding white lights, brighter than the sun, blasted through the convention center's glass ceiling. They were not from police cars. They were from the port. The giant, skeletal container cranes half a mile away had all turned, their high-intensity work lights flooding the ballroom, turning night into day. Bosco yelled, blinded, stumbling. "What is that?" The light was followed by the sound, the deep, chest-thumping whump, whump, whump of helicopters and the roar of high-speed boats on the water. "Federal agents," Luciano's voice cut through the chaos. "Coast Guard, the building is surrounded. It is over." The main ballroom doors burst open. Men in heavy tactical gear stormed in, shouting, "FBI! Hands in the air! Get on the ground!" In that single, chaotic second, as every gun turned toward the new threat, Luciano Vale looked at me. He dropped his gun. It clattered to the polished floor. He raised his hands. Open, palms forward. It was not surrender. It was a signal. "I trust you. Do it." Bosco was blinded, distracted by the raid, his grip on me, his knife loosened for just 1 fraction of a second. It was all I needed. I'm a mother. I'm a survivor. I know how to fight. I slammed my spiked heel down onto his instep, grinding it into the bone. He roared. As he buckled, I drove my elbow backward, using my entire body, connecting with the soft spot under his jaw. I heard a wet crack. He released me, stumbling back, clutching his throat. I scrambled away on my hands and knees, toward Luciano. Bosco and his men were running. They were not running toward the police. They were running for the service exit, the same one Evan had used. It was a massive roll-up loading gate that led directly to the docks. Luciano did not run after them. He ran to the stage manager's control panel, set into the wall. He slammed his gloved fist onto a large red button. I heard a deafening groan of machinery outside. The loading gate was slamming shut, but he was not just closing the door. He was still in control of the cranes. One of the massive port cranes swung its arm. A 40-foot red steel container, which had been suspended in the air, was lowered. It did not just block the exit. It slammed down onto the pavement with the force of a building collapsing, a perfect wall of solid steel. He had trapped them. He had trapped them with logistics. The ballroom was a storm of flashing blue and red lights. The jazz music was gone, replaced by the shouts of federal agents and the zip-tie cuffs being ratcheted tight. It was over. Bosco Leone was on his knees, hands laced behind his head, his face a mask of blood and disbelief. The polite executives from Brighter Miles were being pushed against the wall. The Maranzano crew was broken. I saw Evan. He was huddled by a table, being cuffed by a Boston police officer. He looked small, pathetic, and irrelevant. I stood in the center of the chaos, my body shaking so hard I could barely stand. My beautiful dress was torn at the shoulder. Luciano walked toward me. He had discarded his jacket. His crisp white shirt was soaked in dark, arterial red on his right shoulder. He was pale, but he was standing. The clean, cold smell of mint cut through the gunpowder and the lingering, cheap peppermint. I stood in the wreckage of the trap, and for the first time, I was not afraid. I could hear my own heart hammering in my chest, and it felt like it was beating in time with his. Evan was led past me by the officer. He stopped, his face crumpled in a mask of self-pity. "Marin," he croaked, his voice raw, I am sorry, I am so sorry." I looked at him. really looked at him. The anger was gone. The love I'd once felt was a distant, cold memory. There was just nothing. An ending. "Apologize to your son. Evan," I said. My voice was not cruel, it was just tired. The officer pulled him away. I turned back to Luciano. He had not taken his eyes off me. He was here. He had stayed. The chaos of the ballroom was replaced by the sterile, quiet panic of an emergency room. But we did not go to Mass General, where Ray worked. Luciano, his face pale and tight, directed his driver to a private clinic in the Back Bay, a building of dark glass and limestone with no name on the door. We were met in an underground garage. A trauma doctor, an older man with calm, resigned eyes who introduced himself only as Dr. Albin, was waiting for us. He did not ask what had happened. He did not ask about the police. He simply cut away the ruins of Luciano's tuxedo shirt. I sat on a small stool in the corner of the brightly lit treatment room. The bullet had torn a long, raw furrow along his right shoulder and upper arm. It was deep, dark red, and bleeding profusely. "You are a fortunate man, Mr. Vale," the doctor said, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he cleaned the wound. A centimeter to the left, and it would have severed the brachial artery. You would not have made it out of that ballroom. Luciano just watched the needle as the doctor began to stitch, his face impassive. Luck was not involved. "Doctor," she moved quickly. My hands were shaking. I was not watching the stitches. I was reading a document. 2 federal agents, a man and a woman in identical, grim suits, were sitting in the chairs opposite me. They had arrived almost as soon as we had. "Miss Cole," the woman said, her voice flat, "this is your statement. We just need you to review and sign it. It confirms your timeline of the wire transfer you initiated, your activation of the Bait account." I read the pages. My work was all there, a dry, factual account of my forensic accounting, my discovery of the Brighter Miles fraud, my role in springing the trap. It painted me as a confidential informant. In the official report, I did not exist. I was CI7. "You are keeping me anonymous," I said. It was a statement, not a question. The male agent nodded. "Your digital evidence is what makes the case ironclad, but as far as the public record or the Maranzano defense team will ever know, you were not there. It is safer for you and for your son." I looked at Luciano. He was watching me. He nodded. Once. I picked up the pen and signed my name on the bottom of every page. Marin Cole. It felt final. The doctor finished bandaging Luciano's shoulder, a thick, white swath of gauze. "No heavy lifting for at least 2 weeks. Keep it dry. You'll have a significant scar." Luciano slid off the table. One of his men had appeared with a fresh black shirt and jacket. He put them on, his face betraying nothing, though I could see the pain in the tight set of his jaw. He looked at the agents. "She is finished," he said. The agents stood, collected their papers, and left. The room was suddenly quiet, smelling of antiseptic and the cold, metallic scent of blood. "You should have gone to a real hospital," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "This is a real hospital," he replied, flexing his gloved left hand. "It is just mine." He looked at me, his gray eyes softer than I had ever seen them, exhaustion pulling at the corners. "You were brave tonight, Marin." "I was terrified," I admitted. "My hands are still shaking." "Good," he said. "Bravery is not about being fearless. It is about being terrified and doing it anyway." He gestured to the door. "Let us go home." We returned to the apartment. The steel shutters were retracted. The bullet hole in the window was gone, replaced by a flawless, new pane of glass. It was as if the shooting had never happened. But it had, and I had changed. The apartment, which I had once seen as a gilded cage, now felt like a fortress. It felt like the only safe place on earth. The next day, I called Ray. "I am moving," she announced. Before I could even get a word out, "I found a place. It is a few blocks away. Actually, it is in your building, 2 floors down. The lease was just available. Funny. That. Ray, you do not have to put yourself in the middle of this." It is dangerous. "Shut up, Marin," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, her old, bossy nurse tone returning. "You think I'm going to let you and my nephew live in a building full of mafia men without a proper chaperone? Besides, the rent is apparently handled for the first 6 months. Who am I to argue with a clean lease?" She moved in that weekend, and she did not come alone. She brought Mrs. Petrov from my old building. She brought the owner of the corner store, a man named Sal who had always given Aiden free candy. She organized. She was a force of nature. She created a phone tree. She called it the Neighborhood Trust. It was a network of normal people, shop owners, other parents, all living in the Vale-owned properties, who were now quietly looking out for each other, looking out for us. We established a new routine for Aiden. We sat him down, Luciano and I on the big sofa. Luciano's arm was in a black sling, but he sat tall, projecting calm. "Aiden," I started, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "We need to talk about strangers. Again." "I know," he said, puffing out his small chest. "I do not talk to them." "That is right, Mom," Luciano said, his voice gentle. "But sometimes a stranger might lie. They might say they know me, or they know your mom. They might say Mommy is hurt, and you have to come with them right away." Aiden's eyes went wide. "So, we have a password," I said, forcing a bright smile. "A magic word, a secret word that only you and I and Luciano and Aunt Ray and Sophia know. If anyone tries to pick you up from school and they do not know the password, what do?" "I scream," Aiden said immediately. "You scream," Luciano confirmed, his face serious. "You scream as loud as you can, and you run, and you press the button in your backpack. What is our password?" "Pancakes," Aiden whispered, as if it were a sacred secret. "Pancakes," I agreed, my heart aching. We were teaching a 7-year-old counter-surveillance. This was our new normal. The arrests at the gala hit the news like a mortar. Brighter Miles charity affront for mob money laundering. The headline screamed, "Bosco Leone, Maranzano Capo, arrested in FBI sting." The financial world was reeling. But the tabloids, fueled by Evan's bitter jailhouse interviews, found a different, juicier angle. The Boston Herald, the paper that had called me, ran a full front-page story. It was a grainy, unflattering photo of me from my old barista job, my face tired, next to a sleek paparazzi shot of Luciano entering the gala, looking like a dark prince. The headline, "The barista and the boss inside the Mafia billionaire's newest acquisition." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Acquisition," I whispered. "They called me a thing, a piece of property. They are painting me They are painting you as a weakness." Luciano said he was standing by the window, reading the same article on his tablet. His face was like granite. "It is a standard attack. They cannot get to me, so they try to discredit you, to shame you, to isolate you." "Are you going to sue them?" I demanded, my voice rising with a hot, helpless anger. "You have to send a lawyer. You have to make them print a retraction. They are calling me a prostitute." "No." I stared at him, stunned. "What do you mean?" "No, you are just going to let them. You are going to let them destroy me." "Marin," he said, turning to face me. His uninjured hand came up, not to touch me, but to stop my words. "If I sue them, this is not a one-day story. It becomes a 1-year story. It means depositions. It means your name. And Evan's and Aiden's will be in court filings for months. They will dig into every part of your past. They will put your son's picture on the cover again." He paused, his eyes holding mine. "I will not put you or your boy through that. Legal silence is the only way. This story is a fire. If we do not give it oxygen, it will burn itself out. By next week, they will be on to a new politician. We will be old news." He was right. It was agonizing. But he was right. He was not protecting his honor. He was protecting my anonymity. He was protecting Aiden. A week later, the story had faded, just as he had predicted. The Maranzano network was in shambles. Evan had been formally charged. The immediate threat, the one that had held us hostage in this apartment, was gone. Luciano was still on my couch. His arm was out of the sling, the stitches dissolved, leaving a thick, angry red scar. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when he spoke, and his voice quiet. "The apartment is yours," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "The lease is paid, for 5 years. Sophia will remain as Aiden's driver, if you will have her." I froze, my hand on the coffee pot. He was leaving. The realization hit me with a strange, hollow thud. He was tying up loose ends. The debt was paid. "You are going," I said. It was not a question. "My primary work here is finished." "So I was a project," I whispered, turning my back to him, staring at the dark liquid. "I was just a loose end to tie up." "I do not pay debts. Marin, I honor them." I heard him stand, his footsteps stopping behind me. "And you are not a project." He placed a file on the marble counter beside me. It was a formal contract. "The Vale Group has a weakness," he said. "Me. I see the threats I know, the old ways, the men with guns. I did not see the financial threat. I did not see the charity, the money laundering, until you put it right in my face." He tapped the folder. "This is a job offer. I want you to be my independent risk controller. It is a consultant position. You would report only to me. You would have access to our entire financial network. You would hunt. You would find the vulnerabilities I cannot see. You would be my partner on paper." I opened the file. The salary offered was a number I could not even comprehend. It was more than I would have made in 10 years. I am not... "You are a brilliant financial analyst who never got to graduate," he said. "This is a peer contract. I want you to read Clause 4B. My eyes scanned the legal text. Consultant reserves the right to refuse, without penalty, any task related to the non-logistical family side of Vale operations. He was giving me an out. He was giving me a choice. I would be his partner, but I would not have to be his accomplice. He was offering me power and boundaries. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. "I accept." The world settled. Evan took a plea bargain, federal charges of conspiracy and aiding and abetting. He got 10 years. I went to the sentencing. I was not there for him. I was there for the paperwork. Afterward, his new public defender handed me a document, a request for visitation rights. I looked at it. I thought of the man at the school fence. I thought of the man in the ballroom, willing to trade me for his own freedom. I took out my pen. I signed the form, but I added my own stipulations. Visitation is limited to one supervised, 1-hour session per quarter, pending the successful completion of a court-mandated rehabilitation program. No direct contact until a family therapist deems it appropriate. I was not cutting him out. I was building a high, safe wall. Luciano, too, was cleaning his house. The Maranzano family was beheaded, but the body, the network of workers at the port, was still there, angry and unemployed. He did not fire them. He did not crush them. He held a meeting in the massive, echoing canteen at the terminal. I went with him as his new risk controller. He stood on a table and looked at the 200 hardened faces. "The Maranzanos are gone," he said, his voice echoing. "The money they paid you was dirty. The work they gave you was a lie. That ends today. The Vale Group is investing $10 million in this terminal. We are going clean. We are going automated. And every single one of you has a choice. We will retrain you. We will pay for your certifications. You can learn to run the clean logistics, or you can walk away with a severance. But the dirty money stops." It was a revolution, and he was leading it. Life found a new rhythm, a strange, quiet rhythm. Luciano did not leave. He moved from the sofa into the second bedroom, the one that had been his office. We worked together at the dining table, our laptops open, our coffee mugs side by side. We had dinner together, quiet meals on Sunday nights. Aiden insisted. Pancakes, he would demand. Luciano makes the best. And he did. It was absurd. This man, who could break a lock and reroute global finances, made perfect, fluffy pancakes. We sat at the table, the three of us, And we learned to talk. We did not talk about the shooting or the fire. We talked slowly. We talked about Aiden's school project. We talked about a new shipping route from Lisbon. We were not saving each other anymore. We were just staying. One night, after Aiden was asleep, we were working late. The room was quiet. I was so scared, I admitted, staring at my screen. Back then, when you gave me the apartment, I was terrified of being your project, another charity case for the billionaire boss to fix. He stopped typing. I could feel his eyes on me. You are not a plan, Morin, he said. His voice was very quiet, very low. You are not a project. He paused. You are home. My breath hitched. I could not think of anything to say. A slow, rusty laugh bubbled up in my chest. I grabbed a napkin and a pen. I wrote the words down. You are not a plan. You are home. I tucked it into the back of my accounting notebook. He went to bed. I stayed in the living room for a long time. The city lights spread out below me. The apartment was quiet. The bullet hole was gone. I took a deep breath, and I smelled it. It was not the cheap, sweet, threatening peppermint of Bosco Leone. It was not the sharp, cold antiseptic mint of the respirator from the fire. It was a light, warm scent, like mint leaves crushed in a hand, left to steep. It was coming from the kitchen, from a small plant he had bought for the windowsill. It was the smell of survival. It was the smell of safety. It had finally, truly settled. The following summer arrived, carried on a different kind of air. We were not in the city. We were at Cape Ann, in a small, gray shingled cottage perched on a tumble of granite rocks, overlooking the Atlantic. The air here was not filled with exhaust and anxiety. It was clean, sharp with salt, and heavy with the scent of old, sun-warmed wood. Aiden, who was 8 years old now, was down on the small private beach. He was no longer the sleepy, pale boy I had carried out of a burning building. He was tan, loud, and singularly focused on his work. He was building an elaborate sandcastle, complete with a moat that the tide kept filling. His plastic bucket, a bright primary red, was covered in a chaotic collage of cartoon cat stickers. He was completely, utterly safe. I watched him from the wide wooden porch, a cup of cooling coffee in my hands. My left hand rested on the weathered railing, and the sun caught the thin, simple platinum band on my ring finger. It was not a rock. It was not a statement for the tabloid papers that had long since forgotten my name. It was not a purchase. It was a promise, quiet and unadorned. My work was no longer confined to the fortress apartment. Though we still kept it, I was officially the independent risk controller for the Vale Group, but my primary project, the one that consumed my days, was the Harbor Safe Fund. It was the organization Luciano and I had built from the ashes of the Maranzano network, funded entirely by the Vale Group and advised by me. It was the structural antithesis of Brighter Miles. We had retrained the port workers, the men and women left unemployed by the federal seizures. We moved them from dirty money to clean logistics, funded their automated system certifications, and, my favorite part, established a scholarship fund for their children. Every single transaction, every dollar in and every dollar out, was posted on a public-facing ledger that I had designed myself. We had taken the port, the nexus of corruption, and made it transparent. Transparency, I had learned, was a far more effective weapon than a bullet. The past, however, was not entirely finished with us. A package arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a private courier. It was a simple brown cardboard box, taped at the seams, with no return address. Luciano and I placed it on the wide oak kitchen table. He was the one who slit the tape, with a small knife he used for opening letters. Inside, nestled in yellowed, crumbling foam, was an ancient piece of technology, a black brick-sized pager, the kind I had not seen since high school. Beside it was a small micro-cassette tape. We found an old cassette recorder in a drawer, one the cottage owners must have left behind. I pushed the tape in and pressed the play button. We heard a hiss of static, and then a man's voice. It was distorted, low, and urgent. The meeting, 2 a.m., Pier 12. It is a setup. Do not go. I repeat, 2 a.m., Pier 12. Get her out. It is a setup. My hand went to my throat. That phrase, 2 a.m. Under the foam padding, there was one more thing. A faded color photograph, the date stamp in the bottom right corner, a bright digital orange, read October 10th, 1997. It was a picture of the Boston Harbor, the cranes stark against a gray sky. Two people were standing by a chain-link fence, laughing. One was a man in his late 20s, dark-haired, proud, wearing a Union jacket. I recognized the eyes instantly. They were Luciano's eyes. It was his father, Antonio Vale. The other person was a woman. She was younger. Her hair a different style, but her smile, her eyes, the way her head tilted, they were mine. It was my Aunt Clara, my mother's older sister, the one who had worked as a union accountant at the port for years, until she abruptly, inexplicably quit and moved to a quiet suburb in Arizona. My hands were shaking. I walked to the phone on the wall and dialed my mother's number. Her voice was warm, surprised to hear from me on a weekday. "Mom," I said, my own voice thin, "I need you to tell me about Aunt Clara. Why did she really leave Boston?" The line was silent for a long moment. "Marin, what a strange question. She got tired of the cold. She wanted a change." "Mom, please, I'm looking at a photograph. It is of her at the port with a man named Antonio Vale." Silence. Then a sharp, sudden intake of breath, a sound I had not heard since my father's funeral, a sob. "Marin," my mother whispered, her voice breaking, "who told you that name, Clara? She was never supposed to talk about it. She found something in the books. She was just an accountant, but she was smart, like you. She found something awful." I held the phone, my knuckles white. "They were planning a labor accident," my mother cried, the words rushing out now, a secret held for 30 years. To kill him, to kill Antonio Vale because he was trying to clean house, to stop the dirty money, and they were going to silence her, too. Make it look like she was in on it, and then make her disappear. "What happened, Mom?" I whispered. "He warned her," she said. "Mr. Vale, he knew they would target her. He got her out. He sent a message. Told her 2 a.m. Pier 12 was the code for the trap. He saved her life. Marin, he got her on a plane to Arizona with a new name and a new bank account. If it were not for Antonio Vale." My mother wept. "Your aunt would be dead. That family, they saved us." I slowly hung up the phone. My world had just tilted, the foundation of my life shifting under my feet. I looked at Luciano, and he was standing by the table, his hand resting on the old pager. He was watching me, his face quiet. He had known. "She was your aunt," he said. It was not a question. "You knew this. When you came to the fire, you knew who I was." "I knew my father owed a debt to an accountant named Cole," he said, his voice low. "An accountant who disappeared to protect her family. When I heard your name, from the dispatcher, I hoped, but I did not know it was you. Not until I saw your face. The debt of kindness, Marin. It was older than the fire. My father tried to stay. They killed him for it. I had to finish the job." We did not speak for a long time. Later that afternoon, Luciano placed the old black pager on the cottage's fireplace mantel. It sat there, a strange, blocky icon, nestled between seashells and pieces of sea glass, a symbol of a different 2 a.m. call, a reminder that an alarm had been ringing for a generation, waiting for someone to answer. Aiden came in later, his hair damp with sea spray, his face flushed from the sun. He pointed a sandy finger at the pager. "Why do you and Luciano like broken antiques? The buttons do not even work." I smiled, pulling him into a hug, breathing in the smell of salt and boy. "Because, sweetie," I said, kissing the top of his head, "they remind us that we survived." The past was not always a threat. Sometimes it was an anchor. Even Evan's part of the past found a new shape. A letter arrived, forwarded from the apartment, from a federal corrections facility in Pennsylvania. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. It was from Evan. He wrote that he was 1 year into the rehabilitation program. He was clean. For the first time, he wrote, he understood the scope of what he had done. He did not ask for my forgiveness. He did not ask for anything. He just wanted to know if, when Aiden's birthday came, he would be allowed to send a card. I looked at Luciano, and he was across the room, reading a shipping report, the scar on his shoulder a pale silver line against his tan skin. He did not look up, but I knew he was aware of the letter. "It is your decision, Marin," he had said once. Always. I took a piece of paper. I wrote one word, yes. I paused, and then I added a single stipulation, my own boundary, firm and clean, no empty promises. That evening, the sun began to set, a spectacular, fiery display that turned the entire ocean to liquid gold. Luciano came out onto the porch. He was not in a suit. He wore a simple gray shirt and jeans. He looked like a man, not a myth. He stood beside me, his good shoulder brushing mine, and we watched the sky bleed into the sea. "Pancakes tonight?" he asked. His voice was a low, comfortable rumble. It was Sunday. "Always," I said, leaning my head against his arm. It was solid, real. He made a quiet sound, almost a laugh. "We really should learn to cook another dish, Marin." I turned, looking up at his face, at the small lines by his eyes that were not from stress, but from squinting into the sun. A real smile played on my lips. "Do not replace the only thing you do perfectly." He laughed then, a real, soft sound that was just for me. The screen door slammed open, and Aiden burst onto the porch, his mission critical. He ran straight to Luciano, his sandy feet making prints on the clean wood. He was clutching his sheet of cat stickers. "Hold still," Aiden commanded. Luciano, the man who commanded ports and broke families, froze, his expression one of polite confusion. Aiden stood on his absolute tiptoes, his face a mask of pure concentration. He peeled off his favorite sticker, a bright blue cartoon cat, with painstaking care. He reached up and pressed it firmly onto the center of Luciano's silver scar. "There," Aiden announced, patting the sticker proudly, "so it does not hurt anymore." Luciano looked down at the ridiculous, bright blue cat on his shoulder. He did not move. He slowly raised his eyes to meet mine. And the ice was gone. The cold, gray armor he had worn for a lifetime was gone. His eyes were warm. They were clear. They were full. We both started to laugh, not a polite chuckle. A real, shared, rolling laugh that mixed with the sound of the surf. Aiden, pleased with his work, giggled and launched himself at us. Luciano caught him with his good arm, pulling him into a hug, and then he put his other arm around me, pulling us both against his chest. We stood there, the three of us, a strange, patched-together family, watching the last sliver of the sun disappear. The wind coming off the ocean was cool, and it carried the scent of the mint I had planted in the garden boxes by the porch. It was not the cold, sharp scent of survival. It was just mint. Later that night, long after Aiden was asleep, I sat at the small desk by the window. I opened my notebook, the one where I kept my accounts, my budgets, my life. On the last page, I found the napkin I had saved from the diner, the one where I had scribbled his words, "You are not a plan. You are home." Below it, I uncapped my pen. I wrote my own final entry. "No one can buy peace. The one who stays builds it." Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments so we can all connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button. It helps get this story out to more amazing listeners just like you.